And so when I thought about it, there's a lot of spiritual aspects in the language, and everything is kind of surrounded around that. I would, when I was in college, the idea that spirituality um, was debatable was hard to come across. Because in Anishinaabemowin, it's not debated. It's just an accepted fact. There are spirits. They are around, and we feast them, and they direct us and all that. Well, in my psychology class, uh, they said we don't discuss that here because it's not a discipline. And so psychologists trying to describe what occurs in the mind and the brain and biology, there's no room for spirituality in there. Whereas in Anishinaabemowin, you cannot go without the discussion of spirituality. So the existence of the spiritual is just very common. It's just taken for granted, and everything we do is based on how to appease the spirits. And so what happens is that getting back to our discussion about animate, inanimate, certain objects in the language would become alive, and not so much that they have legs and they walk and stuff like that, not the literal translation of a physical being, which they are, but they're alive in terms of spiritual being. So a drum doesn't need to possess legs to walk. So certain items that we have, bima de ziwag ingiu dewe ganag, migwanag, minawadash opwagan, gida same on. So what happens is that certain objects that you would think are inanimate in English are animate, have spiritual life in the language. The drum, a feather, a pipe, tobacco, just to name a very, very few. But these are the sacred objects and items that we used in the language and in the culture. Some of the objects that are inanimate in English become animated in Anishinaabemowin. For instance, the drum, which is dewe gun, feather, which is migwan, tobacco, which is a sema, and the pipe, which is pwagan. And so, so what happens is that a little trick in linguistics is that when you pluralize them, they all end in the letter G. For instance, dewe gun, more than one is dewe ganag. Migwan, migwanag. And tobacco, I don't know that you can pluralize tobacco. Tobacco is tobacco, whether you have one, two, or three. And pipe, opwagan, opwaganag. So in that way, when you hear the pluralization of it, they are animate objects. And so the whole language is set up, is how it's set up. So Anishinaabe, more than one, is Anishinaabeg. One of the pet peeves I have is when people try to use English suffixes on Ojibwe words. One of my pet peeves is the word Anishinaabes. You're using the letter S on an Ojibwe word, and that's just not right. It's Anishinaabeg. And so one of the classes we have on campus here is Anishinaabeg of Lake Superior. And everybody said, I thought it was Anishinaabe. Yeah, that's one group, one person, but to pluralize that's what it is.